What's something you tried once and instantly knew it wasn't for you? Story 1. Sales. I don't like convincing people they need things. They can decide themselves, LOL. Don't want a phone? That's cool with me. My boss once questioned why I didn't try to push an iPhone 14 onto an old man who came in asking for advice on how to use his flip phone. Always loved that one. The only time I ever had good performance was when I got a lucky streak and the customers came in wanting something already. Story 2. I tried going skydiving once, and as soon as I jumped out of the plane, I knew it wasn't for me. The rush of adrenaline was overwhelming, but instead of feeling excited, I was terrified the entire time. The free fall felt like an eternity, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. While I'm glad I faced my fear, I realized that extreme sports just aren't my thing. One jump was more than enough. Story 3. Jogging. I'm in good shape, so it wasn't solely for health reasons. My dog, who I used to go on long walks with, died mostly of old age. I wasn't ready to get another dog, so I decided that jogging would be a great hobby. Feeling connected to the neighborhood was a priority for me as I found myself staying at home a lot with no dog to walk. So I bought decent shoes, did a little research on methods, and started jogging just a few blocks a day at first to get into the groove of my new hobby. OMG, I fucking hated every second of it. There was nothing relaxing or enjoyable about it at all, and I got home every night feeling like I was foolishly making taking a walk punishing rather than fun. About 2 weeks in, I stumbled and fell, scraping my hands up a little. I walked home, put my new shoes in a closet, and never jogged again. I adopted a new dog about a week later. Story 4. Snow skiing. I fell. A lot. I hurt my ass. I couldn't figure out how to stand up without falling again. I fell again. I hurt my ass again. I was freezing. It took me another 5 minutes to stand up just so I could fall yet again and get even colder. Tiny children were whizzing by me like they were competing in some weird kindergarten version of the X Games. I am not cut out for skiing. Story 5. IPA beers. I tried more than I should. Cannot get into them. Every now and then someone will say, but you are going to like this one, because I just say, nope, never met an IPA that I like. It seems like all the IPAs are taking over most of the taps places. Can that many people really like them? Or is everyone scared to be the first to say they suck, so they just keep buying them? Story 6. Door-to-door sales. My trainer was sleazy as fuck and kept pushing us trainees to be the same. They had taken us out of the city to a nearby town, so we didn't really have a way to get home until the end of the day. There were 2 girls with another trainer who noped out after 30 minutes and had a friend come pick them up. Wish I had known so I could have gone home with them. Story 7. I tried to be a morning person every day 2 years. I got a job that started early in the morning. Even though I pushed through and got up every morning, I still could barely do it. I was miserable every single day. Complete bullshit that you can just train yourself to become one. I literally set an alarm to wake up early every day, even on my off days, and it was fucking agony to get up. I'm just not wired to be one. Story 8. Teaching middle school. I taught high school for 19 years, moved states, and had to take a middle school position for a year. I instantly realized it was not for me. I thought, they're just a few grades lower. How different can they be? Completely opposite, exactly. I dragged myself into that school so exhausted and irritable every day. I quickly realized that 1 middle schooler with bad behavior equals 5 high schoolers with bad behavior. My humor went right over their heads. The misbehavior itself was a type of misbehavior I'm not used to. Also, high schoolers sleep. Middle schoolers scream. High schoolers will sometimes be apathetic. Middle schoolers throw things. High schoolers are developing the capacity to think before they speak. Middle schoolers shout whatever comes to mind. High schoolers bully each other online. Middle schoolers bully each other in person in front of a teacher's face. I have never gotten so many rude comments as I did when I taught middle school. Story 9. Oh Lord, this one still makes me feel awful. I was at the Houston Zoo with my wife. We were walking next to the giraffe enclosure, and I was deep in thought about how badly I wanted a corn dog, but how much I didn't want to pay the exorbitant zoo prices for one. We passed a young woman, maybe 22 or 23 years old, who had her shirt lifted and a massive belly button ring on display. This piercing was clearly infected and swollen, and I was pretty grossed out. I thought, God, we don't all want to look at your disgusting navel. Put your shirt down. My wife stopped walking and looked at me in shock with her mouth open. The girl had stopped too, and was looking at me with a face full of pain and anger. I didn't get it for a few moments, and then it hit me. My mind was so full with thoughts of corn dogs and giraffes, I hadn't just thought the insulting comment, but actually spoken it. I went deep red with shame, and when I opened my mouth to try and apologize, not that I knew what to say, she just put her head down and brushed past me. I immediately regretted it, and my wife was furious and disgusted with me the rest of the day. I didn't allow myself to get a corn dog as a sort of penance, but I saved money, so it wasn't much of a penance. Story 10. Cruises. I get seasick, so I was terrified of getting on a ship, My family told me that I wouldn't feel a thing. It was all right at first, and I managed until the night came, and it was time to sleep. Laying flat on the bed made me feel the lull of the boat, and it just made me absolutely sick. My family felt 100% refreshed after that trip, while I felt completely exhausted. I practically ran towards the exit whenever we had land excursions, and when it was finally all over. Also, can I just say, cruises are so dirty I can't. This is the germaphobe in me speaking. Story 11. Fishing. Tearing the worm in half and then dangling it in the water for 10 minutes. You pull it out and it's been chewed up, but it's still wiggling. It's alive the whole time, and then the fish themselves, slimy and flopping and bloody from the hooks. Ugh, not my thing. Story 12. Therapy. Well, I tried it once with 4 different people. The last one was so strange. I wanted to talk to her about my struggles in my career, but she kept fixating on my love relationship and basically tried turning me against him. That's when I decided to close that path. Story 13. Discipline. I went to a summer program that was focused on discipline and getting stronger. Don't ask. My parents knew it wasn't for me, but I thought it would be good for me. It was run by a bunch of retired Army people. I just kept being my free-spirited self, and the people at the camp kept telling me I wasn't going to amount to anything unless I got that under control. Joke's on them. I'm a super highly paid, super respected person who still gets to laugh and goof his way through life. Very few careers actually require discipline and work ethic. If you're a likable creative, you'll make it just as far, if not further, and may innovate along the way as opposed to just doing things the way they're supposed to be done, just because that's how they have been done. Story 14. Sales for an HVAC company. Warehouse work had slowed down, so they sent me out to do some follow-up sales. No, thanks, it's some of the scummiest work. I legit felt bad after making my first sale, $18K to a guy. If he bought it himself and went with the distributor's installer would cost $8K. I get the upsales needing to make profits, yada yada. But damn, it was straight up ripping people off. With the market at the time being so behind, people would pay it in a heartbeat. You need heating, and if you're doing the ductwork already, might as well throw on the cooling as well. Don't forget you have a pet. Let's get the allergy air filter that's a few inches thicker and does nothing. The system would work better with a new thermostat. Oh, your breaker doesn't have any space for the new AC unit. Gotta get one of those as well. I felt bad typing that out. Story 15. Sales. Most of all your coworkers are douchebags, cheaters, and liars. You're treated like crap by management. It's extremely high turnover. I worked at a car dealership and got on the phone and brought people in, and people that I worked with were trying to say they would pay me because they themselves were so lazy they could make a phone call. No mentoring, no mentors, and no one is really your friend ever. Sales is an awful gig to get into. They also want you to push all the stuff on people that don't need it so that you feel like a piece of garbage. Never made that much money on sales. Sold thousands of dollars and made very little. Story 16. Running a department. I'm currently almost done with my first day. It's a trial run as my boss has quit, and it was really just her and I in this department. My big boss is just testing the waters to see how I do before making any hiring, promoting choices. This is my first actual job in my field. Only been here 2 years. And I'm not trained in what my boss did. IDK if it's my period hormones working, it's evil magic or what, but I have not been this stressed in years and had my first panic attack in over a year today. My boss was convinced that I could just pick it all up pretty easily and figure it out. Some things, yes, it's easy. Other things, no. I'm having a much harder time, but everyone is expecting me to just be able to do it and do it quickly. Story 17. Marketing sales jobs. Once in my early 20s, I got totally duped into what I thought was a nice office job because that's how they made it sound, only to be hired. And on my first day of training, they handed me a black polo shirt and told me I'd be selling DTV contracts inside a Costco, lasted like a few months, then ghosted them. That's the only job I've ever done that with. And I don't regret it one bit. Ugh, and their morning huddles always had such a fake, happy cult-like vibe to it. Never doing marketing or sales ever again. Story 18. Factory work. After I dropped out of college, the first time I was hired by a TV factory to work on an assembly line. Pay and benefits were the best around. On my first day, I felt really bad. Had a temp of 102 when I got home. Turned out I had the flu and was out for a while, then they wouldn't take me back. BC, I had absences in my probationary period. I was relieved, having learned I'd get one break of 10 minutes in the morning, a 30-minute lunch. I couldn't do my bathroom, smoking, eating, talking like that. Plus, not to be mean, but those were not my people. I appreciate what they did. The factory moved to Mexico years ago, but it was not my scene. I went back to school and worked more shitty jobs, but at least I could pee without asking permission. Story 19. Boba tea. I had strawberry milk tea, I think. I assumed that for $7 it must be super delicious, so I took a big slurp and I chewed up the little gooey black mystery balls. So awful I wanted to rinse my mouth. I was looking for some water. I would not take another sip if I was paid $20 to do so. Disgusting, really. WTF. Back away from the fad, please. Disgusting. This was a $7 beverage that was fucking horrible. Story 20, wound care. I had an older quadriplegic guy with a tunneling bed sore that was so big and deep that it felt and looked like stuffing a chicken. I could feel his vertebrae on the back of my hand. It all bled and oozed. The smell was horrific. If he could feel what was happening to him, he would have been in agony. Anyway, I learned pretty quickly that I never wanted to do that again. Story 21, being a waiter. I wouldn't consider myself antisocial or a hermit. I do talk and associate with people, but waiting was tough, at least for me. It's not for everyone. I worked at this Vietnamese restaurant, and the owners, being Vietnamese, were strict and blunt. They got mad at me for washing my hands too much after cleaning, for example. They wanted me to bother tables when they didn't even need anything. I had just served them. They yelled at me for sitting when there wasn't work. I was meant to memorize the whole damn menu, which was all in Vietnamese, I might add. You get stressed out trying to balance stuff and move it quickly, moving around the obstacles such as people, chairs, tables, wet floors, and without all of it tipping over at the slightest asymmetrical step. Bowls filled to the brim with scorching hot soup ready to spill if you don't move with near-robotic precision. Oh, and this military group would come in every morning, and it was a nightmare. Imagine a table with like 10 people, and you have to remember who ordered what they ordered in the first place, if you didn't have a little notepad and pen to write it all down. I had trouble memorizing and even jotting down notes in a timely manner when it was just a table of 3, sometimes having to ask them to repeat themselves. As a male waiter, even if you are good at your job, it's tough. You don't get as many tips as the waitresses do. Not to mention, I got paid under the table. I wasn't sure if my tips were even given to me in the first place. Pretty sure the owners who hated me kept some of that money. They expected me to hand all the tips over to them. For what reason? I'm not sure. Maybe that's how it was supposed to work. I still don't know to this day. The only advantage I had, if you could even call it that, was that the customers and owners wouldn't goon all over me like they did the waitresses. I can confidently say I will never attempt to work as a waiter again. Story 22, skiing. I was a grown-ass man when I first tried to learn, 23. I was literally being taught next to small children, and I sincerely could not stand upright. It was so frustrating. I kept falling over. The kids would laugh at me, and I'd struggle to get up again just to fall immediately. It was cartoonish as shit. Also, I don't have a stopping mechanism. My only way to hit the brakes is fall over. Worst of all, I kept falling over on the little escalator thing and would have to awkwardly ride that shit to the top while everyone below laughed at me. Story 23, skiing. Went up the lift exactly once. Fell over halfway down the bunny slope and one of my skis popped off. Struggled to reattach it to my boot for 5 long minutes. Failed. Said F***K this. Popped off my other ski. Carry both as I awkwardly stumbled down the rest of the slope in those stupid boots that keep your knees permanently bent. Threw skis at the rack in front of the cafe at the bottom of the slope. Retrieved my shoes and threw the stupid boots at the rack too before stomping inside and sitting down to order hot chocolate, which is where I spent the entire rest of the weekend while my friends skied. No regrets. Story 24, rock climbing. I went to an indoor gym during my first summer in Colorado. Immediately got terrified of heights, and I've never attempted it since. I didn't learn as quickly about attempting to summit a mountain, but after failed 14 ER and 13 ER attempts, I decided I was fine with just hiking. And same with intense mountain biking. I'll stick to nice flowy trails that aren't in the edge of a mountain. Turns out my love of the mountains only goes up to about 10,000 feet on stable ground. Lowell. Story 25. Wakeboarding. Went with a friend as a teen because her family had a boat and went all the time. I was never strong enough to hold on to the rope. The handle always ripped out of my hands, and the closest I got to standing up was being pulled up out of the water just long enough to flop back in face first. IDK if I would be any better at it now, being a stronger adult, but I don't really care to try again, and I don't know anyone anymore who has a boat that I could go with anyway. Story 26. I enjoyed mountain biking. I enjoyed going downhill fast. I thought I could practice and train and be a downhill mountain bike racer. Then I went to a professional downhill MTB course and realized I would never have the balls to go down those courses as fast as the pros do. Story 27, social gatherings and events. Also busy places like Costco. I just can't do it. Too overwhelming and gives me panic attacks. I'm not a social person. I don't know how to connect with people or enjoy company. I can barely control my volume and tone when I speak because I never talk out loud if I don't have to. Story 28, an isolation tank. It was wildly expensive, like $75 for an hour or something. I got in the water and it just felt slimy. and my foot could feel a hose, which doesn't help the feeling of nothing you're supposed to feel. I couldn't even close the door all the way. I was just immediately claustrophobic and grossed out. I got the hell out of the tank, showered off, and told the front desk guy I hated it. He seemed surprised and said no one else had left as quickly as I had. I think the fact that there are no longer any of these tank spa places in my city leads me to believe that it's actually not for most people. Story 29. Even as a kid, I thought I'd like tinkering with things like electronics. I'd disassemble old electric toys after they stopped working, thinking maybe I'd be able to fix them. Fast forward to adulthood, and I have the money to build a PC. I figure I'd have a good time putting it together. Turns out I'm more the person who will gladly pay someone else to put it together nice and neatly. As satisfying as it is to watch those videos of someone putting a computer together, there's a reason they play it in bits and pieces and at 2x speed. Story 30 Sewing Convention. The person organizing it marketed it as being at a really swank hotel with the really nice conference rooms with lots of daylight shining through the windows. It ended up being in the basement of a nice hotel with the bare concrete floors and curtains as the separator between rooms. We had so limited time there that we had to hurry up during the sewing classes, and I felt like I had paid to work in a sweatshop. Story 31 Snowboarding. I'd been obsessed with the idea and used to look up snowboards in old catalogs all the time. I was completely obsessed and I had never tried it. Finally got my chance to try it while visiting family in New York as a teenager. I was so excited as I strapped in and got ready to glide. Lying immobilized on the ground minutes later after tumbling down the hill like a character in Looney Tunes, it dawned on me that this sport probably wasn't in my future. Story 32 College. I tried it for a year. I despised the people, the professors, the anxiety, the pressure, the need to have a college experience, etc. One of my professors sexually harassed me for half a year. Another professor forced me to get in front of my music class and apologize for being brutally sick, bloody nose and sinuses, fever of 103, and letting the class down when I couldn't make it to a choir performance at a retirement center. I told the music director to go fuck herself. I was a music major. Story 33. Being at stay-at-home mom is very, very hard. Much harder than I expected, but I have no options. Believe me, my husband and I have scoured our brains for ways for me to work. But childcare costs more than I could ever make, so it's not happening. Retrospectively, my husband should have been the Som dad who farmed and gardened, and I should have been the one working in an office to give us retirement and insurance. Live and learn. Story 34, working in healthcare. Started in 2020. Got roped in for 3 years because of how dire and short-staffed they were. After years of back orders and everything going wrong that could, running a surgical department 24/7, with only 3 other employees, being on call and called in every hour of the night. The line was them asking me to work without proper PPE. I'm not going to risk working without a face shield and getting blood in my eyes and getting sick. I got COVID enough times. If you can't provide me with adequate protective clothing, then I can't work. I'm not going to get a life-threatening blood-borne illness because you're cheap and thought we could do without protective gear that is meant to keep us healthy and alive.